Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. It's nice to see you all here tonight. So, with that, we would like to acknowledge the land on which the University at Buffalo operates, which is the territory of the Seneca Nation, a member of the Haudenosaunee Six Nations Confederacy. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty of Peace and Friendship, a pledge to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. It is also covered by the 1794 Treaty of Canandaigua between the United States government and the Six Nations Confederacy, which further affirmed Haudenosaunee land rights and sovereignty in the state of New York. Today, this region is still the home to the Haudenosaunee people, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and share ideas in this territory. So tonight, we're very lucky to have the Sunk Shore Collaborative Duo with us, and they will be introduced by my colleague, Department Chair Stephanie Rothenberg. So please join me in welcoming Stephanie.
Hi, everybody. How are you all doing tonight? So I am very excited to have Carolyn Hall and Clarinda Mac Low with us here tonight. And as Becky mentioned, they're a multidisciplinary art, action, and social engagement duo known as Sunk Shore. So there's going to be some little action happening throughout their talk. And I was very fortunate to meet them last year at an art and science symposium that took place at the School of Visual Arts in New York City in their biological art laboratory, which is somewhat similar to the biological art laboratory that we have here called Coalesce, directed by art professor Paul Vanus. So if you don't know about Coalesce, you should definitely check it out if you want to do some bio art in the art department. And as an artist myself who works at the intersection of art and science and someone very concerned about environmental issues, I was very excited when I was at the symposium with them to learn about Sunk Shore and the way that they make science not only legible to broad audiences, but in the way that they do it in this very actively and performatively methodology that makes it very accessible and fun. Carolyn and Clarinda, they're based in New York City, and so the threat of sea levels rising is always very present, surrounded by the ocean and water everywhere. And through Sunk Shore, they've been helping people relate to climate data, especially around the New York City shoreline, asking how that we can take this abstract data, right, these data sets that are supposed to be representing humans and other than humans, but we've become kind of desensitized to it because we often don't know what the heck it really means, right? You see these visualizations and you're like, And their goal is to really make this data more personal and visceral. So Carolyn, who is a dancer and a marine ecologist, and Clarinda, who is an artist and microbiologist, started the project as a physical walking tour around the city's shoreline that they would combine speculative fiction based in, and I quote, climate modeling, participatory activities, and somatic practice to make complex climate and ecosystem data personal, experiential, and relatable. And these tours have become a template and a methodology that any community can use to talk about their shoreline and empower their local residents to become stakeholders in future world making and imaginative problem solving. So Carolyn Hall holds an MS in marine science with a focus on historical marine ecology. She's a science communication facilitator and an award-winning professional dancer. She can often be found along shorelines, hatching plans for creative public engagement projects around fish, water, and climate change. And she truly believes that making data-rich, complex research more relatable and memorable will improve our future. She co-directs science communication programs for the American Fisheries Society. She's a co-founder of Exact Communication, and she remains a consultant for the Arts and Residency program at GenSpace, which I'll mention in another minute, and on the core team of works on water, which is a collab, and also collaborates with a few other groups, Island and Maho Agawa. And Clarinda Mac Low, who was born and raised in New York City, really experienced the New York City avant-garde art scene. She started out also working in dance, but molecular biology, and now works in performance and installation, creating these participatory events. She also creates organizations as experiments, including Culture Push, and also works on water. And she's a professor in design and technology and a former HIV/AIDS researcher and medical journalist. Clarinda is devoted to her home city and has been intensively investigating its shoreline for over 15 years. And both Carolyn and Clarinda have been program managers at a lab in New York City called GenSpace, which is a community biology laboratory located in New York City. So without further ado, please join me in giving Carolyn and Clarinda a warm welcome.
Turning on our mics. Hello. Hi. I'm Carolyn.
I'm Clarinda.
And we are really grateful to be here. It's nice to see you all. And thank you for the welcome, Stephanie. As Stephanie said, we both have histories and backgrounds in dance, art, and science. And so we are as interested in data and science and figuring out how the world works as we are with our creative projects and our and movement and putting our bodies in the environment. And we came to Sunk Shore because we care a lot about our shoreline communities in New York City. And we've been watching them change pretty radically as climate has been changing.
So Sunk Shore started out, as Stephanie mentioned, as a walking tour of the future. So we use what we call analog virtual reality, which means your imagination, using imagination to activate and create a kind of future speculation situation.
Right. And so we use our artistic and scientific halves to address this climate crisis through Sunk Shore as a project in order to sort of more deeply connect with people and bring them into a relationship to climate data so that they can actually process it and do something with it. And we started, as Stephanie actually alluded to, we started with this question.
Why is relating to climate data and climate change so difficult? You probably all have some thoughts on this, but let's just start with this graph that will come up in a minute.
Sorry, my microphone went off.
So, who's seen this graph?
Anybody?
Okay.
Ooh,
Do you want to tell us about it? Anybody? What do you know about this graph? It's okay if you don't. Go ahead. Sorry, I think over there you were going to say something.
So it's like the disparities in temperature and how much it's increasing over the past 1,000 years.
Great. Right? So you see from 1,000 to 2,000. So that's good. You know how to read this graph. It's called a hockey stick graph because if you turn it 90 degrees, it's like a hockey stick. But it shows using past data how temperature has changed over time and how it's changing really rapidly now. However, you have to have a lot of science literacy to understand this graph. You have to know how to read a graph. You have to know what a line of best fit is. So it's a little complicated.
but it's often how science presents climate data.
Right. And then there's a little more accessible. This is a diagram. It tells us about carbon dioxide, CO2, and how it creates a greenhouse effect. It causes warming. But you have to really concentrate. You look at it, figure out all the terms. You figure out which arrow is going which way. And that is also takes a certain kind of effort and understanding. And then you add to that all of the images we get, so charts and graphs and diagrams and all the images of climate data, climate change, climate crisis, the experiences you're having, all comes together, and it's just a little overwhelming, and especially at this scale. We thought this would be this big a screen, but it's really effective this way.
Right. So now we've started with overwhelming you right off the bat. So before we go any further into Sunk Shore, we actually want to all land together in this space. So if you're able to stand, please stand. And if not, just you can stay seated. But if you are able to stand, please do. And my microphone is not going on. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great.
Check. That's fine. Okay, so just speak into a mic.
Okay. So what I want you to do is everybody just close your eye. And take a second to feel your breathing, listen to your breathing. Feel your feet on the floor. How's your weight sitting on your feet? You can slightly bend your knees. You can shift your weight side to side. And send your imagination down through the floor to the layers of this building, including cement and wood, and finally to the earth, to the soil underneath this building that is supporting all of this. And keep that support in mind while you start to think about the space you're in. What can you feel in this space? What does the air feel like against your skin? What can you hear in this space? What's the closest sound to you that you can hear? And then shifting your attention further away from you, what's the furthest sound you can hear? And then bringing yourself back in the room. I'm going to try something with your eyes closed. I want you to turn your body or your head in the direction that is north without opening your eyes. Yeah, go ahead. All right. Everybody facing where they think north is? Okay, open your eyes. Go looking in any different directions. North is that way. How many of you were facing that way? Not bad. A good percentage.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, actually.
Excellent. Okay, so now close your eyes again. Close your eyes again. So now, with your eyes closed, I want you to think of home. Home can be where you just came from tonight. Home can be from where you were a year ago. Home can be from generations ago. Whatever you feel is home. And put that place in your mind. And I want you to turn your body towards that place. Now open your eyes and just look at all the different directions we're facing. Yeah. Right? So we come from all over, right? We come from all over. Say hi to someone, yeah, or fist bump, that's great. And then have a seat. I know. But that's kind of why we did the north one first. So you have a reference. Okay. So now that you are in your sensing body, right? Your feeling body and your sort of here, I want to talk about the second question that really led us to create Sunk Shore the way we did. Because it's so challenging, because we get overwhelmed, because data is big and unwieldy, we wanted to know How can we help people feel and relate to climate data so that it becomes personal, so that it matters to them? And so the question then was, how do we learn, right? Data. We're talking about data. How do we bring in and process data? And of course, we think of the brain, right? We think of cognitive. We think of analyzing. We think of that. That comes to mind first. But before the brain, there's something else. Sensory perception and embodied learning. And that is exactly what we were just doing in this moment. You were using your senses to land here, to be here, to like actually register your experience here. That's sight, that's sound, that's touch, that's smell. That is also kinesthetic. That's also your physical learning. And actually, those sensory neurons, they are taking in information and they are creating a way for you to learn split seconds before it travels to your brain and your brain starts analyzing it. And those sensory reactions, that sensory learning, is pretty crucial for a number of really important things. One of them is memory retention. How many of you have like a certain smell? Every time you smell it, it reminds you of something. Yeah, that's sensory learning. When I smell like fresh baked cranberry orange bread, that's what my mom used to make in the winter. And I immediately go back at it. So memory retention. It's also emotional reaction. Emotional reaction is very tied to these sensory learning and embodied learning parts of us. And also decision making. So you've heard of fight, flight, or flight, freeze and flight, right? You've heard of those? That is sensory reaction. You almost choose to do that before your brain can analyze. Then your brain can analyze and be like, wait, do I need to run? Do I need to? But you have with instinct first. That's from sensory learning. So these are all important when it comes to learning something that is more than just thinking. It's also feeling.
So, art is one way into a sensory learning. Who knows this painting? Has anybody seen that painting? Okay. So this is Guernica, and it is a painting that Pablo Picasso created in 1937 as a response to his experience of the Spanish Civil War. And it was his way of kind of reaching out and trying to communicate what was happening in that situation. And so you can use the sensory qualities that we approach through the arts to understand issues in a different way, right? In a more visceral way. So here's a more current version where two artists and designers created what they call teeter-totter wall. So this is at the border of Juarez in Mexico and a town in New Mexico. And for 40 minutes, it was kind of a guerrilla action. They did it without permission. But they brought these steel beams and created these seesaws between the two places, seeing it as a way, using the weight of these children to communicate our connection through what is now a somewhat arbitrary border and seems like a barrier, but they created a connection through that barrier and using that weight, that actual weight exchange as a communication device. And then bringing it back to thinking about climate crisis, Olafur Eliasson is an artist who works on a very large scale quite often, and he worked with Minnick Rosing to create Ice Watch, which he did in both 2014 2018. And what they did is they went to the Greenland ice sheet and the pieces that were falling off, and they brought some of those pieces into Copenhagen and London and put them there for people to experience, to touch, to listen to, and watch them melt. Because it was bringing something that can be very far away. This idea of the glaciers melting, the ice sheet diminishing, it can feel very far away, but when you actually see these pieces of ice diminishing in front of your eyes, it brings it closer to your actual body. And then in Copenhagen also, they are surrounded by water. There was this in 2022, they created these benches that show where the shoreline will be, where the water will be at 2100. So that's a meter above the current shoreline. And it's also, again, a kind of physical, visceral way of understanding, oh, I'm going to be underwater right here. And then I have to climb over it. But it's also playful because you clamber up this bench and you go like, okay, this is my bench on the shoreline now. And we also have a friend, Eve Mosher, who this was in 2007, created a high water line where there would be storm surge and sea level rise in the future by making a chalk line through 70 miles of New York City shoreline. And this was actually before Superstorm Sandy, when we did in fact see this kind of storm surge. So she was pretty prescient. But you can see how like just having this one line gives you so much information. Understanding like, oh, that whole street underwater. And then you use your imagination, you feel something different through your body because it's right there in a place. So, okay. Those artists had some extreme weather experiences, ideas. So we just want to hear a little bit about your experiences with extreme weather or climate change, any experience you've had that feels like, oh, wow, that was that.
And I have a microphone. So yes, I see a hand raised. And this could be from here in Buffalo or from one of those homes you've been thinking about. Oh my word.
The October storm in like 2008. I remember that. They were like down the power lines and everything.
We're here in Buffalo. Okay, right. And was it just wind or was there snow?
It was less.
In October?
Yeah, it was
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, over there. I'm coming.
Okay, so I don't know what storm it was specifically, but I remember I think it was like, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 years ago. There was like this really big thunderstorm and my mom and I were like, oh, let's go get some chicken from our local like place. And we were like going through like knee-high water to try and go to a restaurant and we didn't go, which I'm so really sad about.
Here
No, it was back in Queens.
in Queens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I probably remember that storm.
Yeah. That street flooding, right? Yeah. We'll be talking about that, I guess.
I think like 2 winters ago, there was a really, really bad snowstorm like around Christmas time up here. And I remember a lot of people like couldn't get home or just like it was so messed up. People died and stuff. It was really bad.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But this was that like rain.
Mhm.
What were the inches? It was really, really. We heard about it. Cars were bears.
Yes, that's what we heard. And so this is interesting because we're talking about snow, right? And we're talking about extreme weather that's not about warming. And that's why people often call it climate weirding. Because things start changing, but not necessarily just getting warmer.
One more example. Anything else? Anywhere else? Oh, oh, okay, two. We got two. I'll go there and I'll come back to you. Okay. Whose hand is raised?
Yeah, I used to live down in South Carolina, and my friends were in Charleston. We had a hurricane like 4 years ago, and downtown Charleston got so flooded that they had taken 5 kayaks, and since the park's up 1 story, they were just like kayaking through like the streets and everything, and like through the buildings and alleyways. They got put on like Barstool's Instagram for it. It was a pretty wicked time.
It flooded up a whole story of the buildings. And there was someone down here, right?
With that Christmas time storm, I think it was in 2022. At the time I was living on the west side of Buffalo in a very compact neighborhood, and the power was out in my apartment for 4 days. And luckily, I had some friends' houses that I was able to walk to kind of warm up. But then I would go back over to my apartment to like stay with my cats. I didn't want to take them out in the taxi and have them even colder. And on the day where things started getting cleared out a little bit and grocery stores were open again, I walked over to the grocery store and I saw this petite woman with way too many bags in her arms, and they had like spilled like on the street. Like there was no shovel sidewalk, so she was walking on the street and cars were trying to get around. So I went over and I started helping her, and she had like jugs of water, and I was like, "Oh, your water's not like running," because a lot of people's water still was going in if their power was out. And she said, "It's for my baby. You're supposed to use, purified water for baby formula." And I was like, "Oh, how old's your baby?" And she said 2 weeks old. So she was out, that postpartum, trying to get resources for her family.
Yeah, so you can see these are visceral experiences that you've had, you've experienced, you've heard about. These are real experiences. And that's part of why we started to develop Sunk Shore, is these are important kinds of data as well.
Right. So Sunk Shore came out of all the things we were talking about before, but also for us, as we were saying in New York City, Sandy really changed people's feelings about our shorelines. Suddenly people were aware we were surrounded by water and that water was only dangerous, right? But water is many other things. So we wanted to help people hear about climate change, hear the data, but actually have a relationship to it. So we could put this into practice so that it could become something that they could process, from using past data to understand the present and then to project into the future. So we have 4 main ingredients for all of the Sunk Shore projects. These next slides will be all different walking tours. This one, well, the first one is make it local. And this one, we're literally in the middle of Flushing Creek in Queens, New York City. People canoed and kayaked to us so we could tell them about the future they were living in. They didn't know they were living in the future, but they were. And so the idea of making it local is precisely what just happened here. There is local memory and local history that people feel really connected to, that people are emotionally invested in, and also things that we can't know if we aren't from that very shoreline. We know our shorelines, but we need to learn what's happening in that local place. And talking to someone about changes that are happening there. Like, did you know that this sea level is going to rise up to 6 feet by 2100? They can then look at their neighborhood, their neighbors, their own home and say, "Oh, wow, that's something I have to think about." And there's immediately a different way of caring when you make it local. Make it active. So this was our picture that was up first when you came in. This is at Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. This is on the pier. And we are we're doing flight instruction, taking our cues from the seagulls and the pigeons that do very well in the fierce winds that come through the narrowest part of Hudson Bay. And we're like, well, this is just going to get more stormy, so we better learn how to fly. And making it active it activates what we were talking about in terms of sensory learning. By putting it in the body, there's a different way of remembering it, and you can attach it to the fact through remembering it in your body. Okay, ingredient number 3, using the imagination. Clarinda referenced imagination earlier with the analog virtual reality. And by using your imagination, you can expand your understanding of a place or situation from what you know in the moment to broaden it to any other possibilities. And so by doing that, this is a way we can help people travel into the future with us when we time travel into the future. So here we are on Governor's Island in New York City, literally an island in the middle of the East River. And we know that where we're about to go to, the water has risen 6 feet. And so it's a very watery world. And so how do we help give people skills to navigate a watery world? Well, we learn from fish, of course. So where do fish have their eyes? Think of a fish. Where are their eyes?
Mm-hmm.
Side of their head. Yes, so that we are in the front, they're on the sides. And the best way that I've found to help people see like a fish is to actually put like a piece of paper in front of their right at the end of their nose, or, sorry, I'm going to talk loudly, or if you put your hands up like this, right in front of your eyes, at the end of your nose, where can you see? Try it. Where can you see? When your eyes open, where can you see? Your peripheral vision, right? Suddenly you're more aware of your peripheral vision. Right. And so then to see in front of you, you have to turn your head and turn your head. Before you know it, you're looking like a fish swimming through the water. So, and then engage your imagination for navigation in a watery world. And finally, make it fun. I think the fish is really fun. But making it fun is a way to get people engaged and to keep them engaged, even if the information is a little difficult. Clarinda has a great term for this.
So I just call it ha ha oh. Like ha ha oh. So I found, especially in the US, audiences respond to laughter. They allow themselves to open up. And then you can kind of slip in and get some information that might otherwise be hard to take.
Right. So if you can get people engaged and keep them engaged so they're having fun, and then they're slowly but surely getting the information about climate change at their shoreline and thinking about, okay, let me let that sink in. So those are the 4 ingredients that are in all of our Sunshore projects, which are these tours and also take many other forms. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those.
So we also branched out from those tours into other forms. We started thinking about, and this is especially during what I call stay-at-home time, where we could not interact, right? So what are other ways to communicate about these ideas? So we started working with large-scale collage, because we both have a collage practice. And that's a way to kind of create a visual representation of that speculative future we've been asking people to imagine. And in this case, we were working with a piece called Gowanus 2100, where we were imagining the utopian future of around the Gowanus Canal in New York City, which is, as it happens, a Superfund site, very toxic, but also a space of real estate speculation. So it's a complex, contested site, but we were engaging with a show called Brooklyn Utopias. So we tried to see into a positive future. And so this is detail where you can see all of the buildings have become gardens, maybe multi-species paradise, etc. And then we started thinking about how this collage form could work as layering, thinking about how does the past, present, and future come in to that collage form. And so we started thinking about transparencies. But one of the things that came in as you were discussing it, so in this, we did this project in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which I'll talk about more soon, but you can see that past, the map of the past, and you see some things from the present, and then this is an extrapolated future. But we also talk a lot about in the tours in general, like not just what will happen, but how we respond, how we adapt. And we think a lot about processes and materials. So in creating these transparencies, we were like, you can't just go ahead and use like sheets of petroleum-based plastic. That's just not consistent. So we started working, because we've been at GenSpace, as you heard, we started working with bio-based plastic. In this case, gelatin plastic. And it was really interesting because it doesn't behave like petroleum-based plastic. It moves, it changes with the environment. It has coloration. It changes its thickness. It moves with the humidity. It starts to curve. So we started to have a different relationship to the idea of transparency, to the idea of perfection, and even changing our ideas about what is beautiful and what is perfect is part of what we started thinking about being part of some shore. Okay, so there's also video. So this is a way to take people through a narrative, a kind of tour, but without the physical presence. And again, we were working with Gowanus 2100, and we took people from the 2020s to the 2090s, talking about all the things will happen along the way. So here in the 2030s, temperature's still rising, water is still rising, but people are still gonna build because they just do. And in fact, it turns out it's quite easy to predict the future because that shoreline we're on is now completely built up. And this was in 2022. So,
And I should say that with Superstorm Sandy, Gowanus is really near where I live. It flooded and it rose over 10 feet and flooded buildings in the neighborhood that had to be destroyed. So they're still building on that same land from when it flooded.
they're not thinking like we are. Okay, so here's a few other stills from that video, including our multi-species paradise. Here we go, where we're going to live in communion with all the creatures, including these flamingos that will come live in New York when it's tropical, which will be true in 2100. It is currently
Subtropical as of 3 years ago.
So this is reality. Get used to it. Move on. So, as Stephanie mentioned, we are working towards creating a template, right? We want to create a sunk shore template that anybody can use in their own neighborhoods to create their own sunk shore imaginative engagements. So we had some contacts in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. We don't actually live there ourselves, but we had someone who had deep roots there that started to introduce us to all the institutions. And so when you work in a socially engaged way, you have to be ethical and present. And there's a term called deep hanging out, which is mostly comes from anthropology, but it's a good thing to borrow because it means really being present in a place and just being with people. And so through doing that, we found a group, right? We found a group of people who became our collaborators. And we said, okay, you're interested in talking about how climate has shifted your neighborhood. So what do you want to do? You want to make a tour? And they're like, no, we want to make a documentary. Great. So they created a documentary about their neighbors, their experience and their neighbors' experiences of the changes that had taken place over the past 30 years. And this is from the council person talking about the changes he's seen and the changes that people have reported, the problems that people have seen. And that includes, you saw that flooding, that's from heavy rainstorms. So somebody was talking about their experience in Queens with flooding. So we have similar flooding there where because our infrastructure isn't ready for the huge tropical storms we get now in terms of rain, it starts to flood by coming up from the sewer. So even if you're not in danger of actual sea level rise, you can still have a lot of flooding.
Yep.
The other piece of art that they made was this lovely, whimsical map of their neighborhood that I don't know if you remember, sometimes you see them in diners, there's a map and then there's ads around and they show places you should visit. Well, anyway, that's what they did with Bay Ridge, but it's their climate crisis map. And so what they did was they actually did the research of potential flooding. That's the red, yellow, and orange. The red is minor potential, like the lowest level, and orange is the most major level. And in the video, you saw that the waves going up and over something, up and over a fence. They have actually quite a decent seawall. But now the storm surge is
more regularly splashing over that and making that whole walkway flooded. In the future, that will just be completely flooded. Especially if it goes up, if it's yellow, but especially if it goes up to orange. And then you'll see these fun symbols. So these are things that the locals were like, these are things that keep happening. So there's flooding both at the shoreline, and as you can see here, there's flooding inland, like the one that we saw in the video. There was a tornado that tore through Bay Ridge, actually through Brooklyn and a number of other parts, but in Bay Ridge it caused quite a bit of damage because it was actually, that's sort of where it hit the water. And it's very memorable. Everyone remembers the tornado. Everyone they talked about they talked to for the documentary remembered the tornado. And the favorite one, this is what the importance of local is. This symbol, this is sinkholes. Does everyone know what a sinkhole is? Yeah, I see nodding. You know, like when the pavement, suddenly some of the pavement caves in, that's a sinkhole. Well, Bay Ridge, lucky Bay Ridge, gets a lot of them. And the reason why, this is why knowing the past is helpful. The reason why Bay Ridge is a ridge that then slopes down to the Narrows, which is part of the New York Harbor. And it used to have dozens of streams before it got paved and built over. Those dozens of streams make for a lot of moisture underneath all that infrastructure. And the fact that the storms are getting heavier and there's more kept water underneath because it doesn't have anywhere to go and because the sewage system can't carry it. This causes the roads to cave. And so these are sinkholes big enough to swallow cars. So what they've marked on this map are sinkholes that made the news. So they have many more than this, but these are sinkholes that actually made the news. And so these are I love this map because it is whimsical. They're also like, yes, Bay Ridge has sinkholes. Sinkholes, bottom supply. But so what I like about, what we love about this is that we have this group in Bay Ridge, their map and their documentary were shown in the gallery with our bioplastic collage. So they became part of the art show, which was great. We also had workshops in the community to reach other members of the community. We had an introduction to sunk shore methodology workshop. We worked at a senior center and did a collage workshop where they were envisioning the future of their shoreline. And then we did an activation at the public library where we had crayons and pens and stamps, and they were asking people, why do you love your shoreline? What do you do at your shoreline? Do you want to illustrate it or illustrate the future of it? And we had a lot of fun actually hearing stories about the shoreline. I'm going to share one really quick.
Okay.
One shoreline story. There was this gentleman who talked about growing up in Bay Ridge when the water was so polluted, you just saw oil slicks and trash on top of the water. This was in the 70s. But he and his family still went swimming in the Narrows. But what he would do is he would throw his, do you remember this? He would throw his younger brother in the water first, which would clear a space, and then he would jump in.
It sounds about right. Yeah, see.
But we would not know this, right? This was from one of the library activations. Okay. And then the other thing we did was we actually literally put our bodies in the space, both as research, as we're learning about Bay Ridge, but also as activations with the public. So this is, we had been doing gestures and improvising along this pier in Bay Ridge, and people had gathered, and we asked them if they wanted to learn gestures for the future, for the survival. If all electricity goes down and you can't use, and cell phones go down, you can't use anything but gestures. So like this is the water is rising, or the one we were just doing. So if it's flooding and the water is rising, then I can do this. Clarinda can see me, she can do that, and then she can send it to somebody else, right? You don't need electricity. This one is if there's danger coming from one way or another, it's go this way or go this way. And then there are two more gestures that you'll see in this one. The next one you'll see is the sinkhole warning that came from, this is Rosemary. Rosemary donned the orange jumpsuit with us, but she is from Bay Ridge.
And she's like, we need a gesture for sinkholes. So this is the sinkhole gesture. Beware, there's a sinkhole. You might fall in. And then we're back to the flight instructions. So again, you can see that there are birds on the lights actually, but this is teaching people how to fly, teaching people how to feel the wind, like the seagulls and the pigeons. Okay, so we're going to do a tiny bit of sump shoring with you. This is one of our introductory exercises. And if you would like to stand again, please do. Please do if you can. And if you want to stay seated, that's fine, but stand is good if you can. Okay, so close your eyes. Okay, so close your eyes, and I want you to think of a water body that has meaning to you. That can be one you recently met. It can be one you've been to many, many times. It could be one that you had one really meaningful experience with many years ago. A river, a lake, the sea, any kind of water body. So really put yourself there now. Really imagine yourself standing there at that shoreline. Remember how the ground felt in that space? What can you smell there? What does it smell like there? How does the air feel on your skin? Is it windy or still? Warm or cold? What can you hear? What other life is around you? When you look around the space in your mind, when you look around this water body with your eyes closed, what do you see? Is it more wild and natural, or is it all built up? Is it urban? Something in between? If you've been in the water, in your mind now step into that water. How does it feel? Does it move your body? Is it warm or cold? And if you've tasted this water, how does it taste? Is it salty? I don't know. So 30 more seconds to picture this water body and what you feel around it, what you sense around it, what brought you there. Okay, open your eyes and turn to somebody next to you. And you and your new conversation partner are going to tell each other about your water body. And you'll have 2 minutes each. So whoever's going to start, please go ahead and start.
You haven't switch. And I've had second person talk about the water gun. I know there's a lot more to say. I just switch.
Okay. So thank you for doing that exercise. Was it fun to share about the waterways that are meeting with you? Yeah. So okay, I would love to hear all your stories, but we are actually towards the end of our time, and I just wanted to say that this what we're doing by using our creative and artistic skills to try to bring big issues, big ideas. Climate is a really big and scary issue, but trying to bring it down to a personal, relatable level. We're doing it because we want more people to feel empowered to understand it, to adapt to it, and to move forward into the future in a way they want to do it.
And just to reiterate what I was saying before, these tools, these artistic tools, they are an expansive practice and they can be used for self-expression, but they can also live in many different forms, in many different ways of communicating.
Yes. So
if you want to get in touch with us, please do. There's all these emails. If you want to go straight to our website, there's a QR code. And now it's time to say questions, comments, thoughts.
yeah, if you have any questions, please. And we have a microphone to hand around. Any questions?
Questions. Who wants to start it off?
Hi, thank you for being here. My question is, does your performance and also include steps on how they can make a difference themselves? You know, does it link them back to changes that they make in their own lives? You know?
So I bet we both will answer this slightly differently. Yes, in different ways for different projects. So when we've been doing the walking tours, we always end with a chance to discuss what we've done and if people have questions. And then we usually have a pamphlet of local places to contact to learn more or to do something, depending on what that is. And then like for Bay Ridge, we actually had a community meetup to talk about what was happening climate-wise. And they generated ideas in that meeting. One of which was like, we just need more gardens. We need less built space. We need more gardens, roofs, and everywhere.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where we want to understand both the structural and personal nature. So by understanding it personally, we're not trying to tell people you have to solve it personally. We're trying to give them an understanding of what's happening. And then understand, so part of the Bay Ridge Roundtable that was amazing is that people really who attended it, obviously it's a self-selected audience, they wanted to be there, but they did understand that they have to pressure the people that create regulation. They understood the steps they needed to take, and they just needed to find community and ways of getting together to make that most effective.
Right. So obviously there are big scale ways of trying to address it, and there's small scale ways of addressing it. We don't want to prescribe anything for one community, but we want to present and offer ways to think about it in both directions.
So it's kind of like you just need them to believe in it, because there are so many things out there on ways to change the future, but not everyone believes in it. So yeah, I think that does a really great job putting them, the body and the sensory into it so that it becomes very real to them. So very cool.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
most this is an art. You got all art students, right? Or art professors or art, right? Are any of you doing this kind of community engagement practice? Oh, was there a question? Oh,
There's
so
some other comment, but
go for it.
I like how you do like the sensory part of it. As someone who has ADHD, it's kind of more like I like it better than just like, especially because you guys made it more engaging tonight. I like that much more than just the like sitting and listening and everything because it's more engaging to me.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's by design because understanding how to convey information in every situation is really important to us. So we do a lot of workshops. So we haven't just been in New York City. We've been to the Czech Republic and Budapest and Hungary. I've been to Kazakhstan, and we've shared these methods in workshops there. And that's part of what we're trying to understand is like these are tools that happen in any situation. Like if we're going to do a lecture, we're not suddenly going to just drop all our tools. And so that is something to think about. Like, how do you create an engaging situation anywhere you are?
Thank you. I really appreciate your comment. Also, because we both come from movement, and so we know how important it is to process things by doing. Like, it's really important for both of us. We obviously can't stand still. We gesture like crazy. But so I really appreciate that because it's important to us as well. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't see you get the microphone.
It's okay.
Anybody else have thoughts, questions, comments?
I have a question.
And then Paul, let's go.
How did you guys meet and start working together?
I just asked that, not a minute, 10 minutes ago. No.
You want to go for it? Are you no? That's it.
So we met through the dance world originally, but then
Work together.
no, we never danced together. No,
Like this.
yeah. So but when Carolyn went back to grad school
For marine science. I went back to grad school for marine science, and when I graduated,
I said, I think you have to come work with me.
she's the director.
Yeah, I dream up things and I'm like, what about this? And then Carolyn's like, okay, and then we'll do it this way, this way, and this way. And, you have to have rules.
Yeah.
But then, so that's how we met and why we started working together, because we both had this urge to understand things through both the scientific lens, the movement lens, and artistic lens.
Yeah, and I will say that yes to all those lenses. We have 3 eyes, but we also both really see communication in a way that has to be personal, and we do it in our independent. We actually do things apart sometimes too. We do it in our independent lives as well. When I was in school, grad school for marine science, I'd be out in the field with a bunch of senior scientists and grad students, and I was new. But people would come up, people who lived in the area we were working, they'd go, what are you doing? And none of the other scientists would stop. And I'd be like, this is a chance to have them invest in what's happening. And I enjoyed talking to them. And Clarinda has done a ton of science writing. And
yeah, I don't like to talk to people. No, I do. But because I worked in laboratories and then switched to a more communication level writing role, I started to see how my art and my scientific training could come together to actually, again, be expansive, because I was like, what can I do with art? Well, I want to save the world. How can I do with art? Crap. Okay. So, but you can shift consciousness with the art. That was where I got hooked.
Yep.
Okay, Paul.
Hi, I have a question. I had a really disturbing conversation with a rather wealthy tech guy who's interested in the arts in San Francisco developing it. And it was disturbing because I said, well, I'm from Buffalo. And, oh boy, I was thinking about, I really want to get some property up there. Because, of course, things are going to be so bad here. It's going to be careful with water. I don't think a big plot of land. And it was disturbing for a lot of reasons. It was disturbing on one hand because he was thinking, of course, taking advantage of the fact that other people in that place to live. It was also disturbing because of this idea of like that you bring up, that climate isn't just getting warmer, it's getting weirder.
Yeah.
And it's getting what we would consider being unpredictable anyways. And so I'm wondering if there are other terms. I like your term climate weirding. Are there other terms that came up, or other ways you talk about the idea of just like, things change, with these stories, things is changing in ways that like are almost unpredictable, but they're also just weird. They're water, they're air, they're droughts, they're.
Well, one of the phrases that we've used in some of these videos and in our own dialogue about this is that it's going to be predictably unpredictable. And that is the future we're moving into, where you actually get to a point where you're like, well, I don't know what it's going to be tomorrow, and you're kind of okay with it. That's it's one term.
And it's funny you bring that up because we did just, when we were doing research, we're doing a workshop tomorrow, we did research on buffalo, right? Because we're here. And what's happening in Buffalo. And in fact, there is this idea that Buffalo will be a climate refuge.
Right. And it's being marketed.
Climate refuge.
Marketed that way.
Yeah. So it's a kind of, again, it comes into how we relate to land as property. But also, I think it's really interesting, especially in Buffalo, like hearing about the storms, that are worse. The lake effect gets worse. What does that mean? I don't know if there are particular terms, but that might be something to do. That's what local terms for climate wording. Like every place have their own term, and then you talk about them, and then you learn something about each other. So yeah, because there's climate crisis, there's climate change, there's climate weirding. It all starts to be language, but if it's local, then you know what you mean when you say, oh yeah, that's Buffalo climate X.
Yeah. And even in New York City, like we're talking about all this flooding, but we also had our first official very long season of drought in New York City, which doesn't seem to make sense if we're getting all of this. Well, it's not the first, but in a long time and in a significant way. And we actually had a wildfire in Brooklyn, which is weird, right? So this thing, like, yes, it's flooding, but it's also drought, and we know why, but it's a hard thing to explain. It's weird. It's like the tornado that went through Bay Ridge. It was so unusual that they will never forget it, right?
So any last thoughts?
Yes.
So I'm not in the art department. I'm secretly here from urban planning.
Fantastic.
I really love what you're doing because you're at the civic arts edge.
Yeah.
And I want all of the planners that I know to learn from you because you're making thinking about the future fun and active. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts for people who are in the arts here in this room, how they might approach the civic edge and how these civic people might approach the arts edge so that we can work better together.
Funny, you should ask. So we have, with our organization Works on Water, we actually have worked with Department of City Planning in New York City. And I am a secret urban planning fan because, New York, you go up to New York, you're like, what is happening? Why is it happening? So, anyway, I think that it just takes curiosity, like a curiosity as an artist towards that civic life. We are people who live in a place. We're not just artists. And it's really important to keep that awareness and then to find the people who will meet you in that middle point. And the same thing for people who are in planning and in civic work, to be open to new ways of thinking. That's hard, right? So it's really, again, about relationship building. But also, like, if people like us and other artists go into the civic realm and kind of create this environment, it actually works. Especially if you bring in like data, what are impressed by data. So yes, I think that it's possible. It just needs the will and the willingness.
Thoughts? Well, I was just going to say, it kind of goes back to the question which I was sadly asking when you had the microphone in your hand. Sorry about that again. Was like, I don't know if any of you as artists are interested in sort of this kind of social practice engagement and community practice engagement because it does seem to be an effective way to catch other professions' attention. And you never know what relationship might come out of it.
Yes. And I think that's our time. Yes. Yes.
Well, you can take the candy or, yeah. All right.
You were an excellent audience. Thank you very much.
So, thank